What's the point? They're all the same. Some stupid killer stalking some...
Not your skill at bargaining.
No deal.
Jesus Christ, what happened to you?
Welcome everyone back to Horror with Nadia, and today I'm talking about The Substance, directed by Qualley. Hopefully I said that right. I saw it over the weekend. Can't stop thinking about it, but before we get into it, please hit that like and subscribe button. I am trying to get to 500 subs by Halloween, so every little bit helps. The first half of this review will contain no spoilers, so it'll be non-spoiler. I will timestamp when I go into spoilers, so just be warning now. Just warning you guys now. Also, please leave me a comment. Let me know if you've seen The Substance, if this changes your mind on going to go see it. Just, leave me a comment. Let me know what you're thinking. And on that note, let's get into The Substance.
One single injection unlocks your DNA and will release another version of yourself.
Now, The Substance is a pretty basic story about beauty standards if you look at it at its core. Not only beauty standards in Hollywood, but I think in general. I think every woman could relate to this, women of any age, really. Men too, but mostly I think this is directed towards women and what we think of in beauty standards nowadays. By the way, the first thing I did after I got out of the movie was basically text every female friend I know saying, holy cow, you need to go see this movie. The story follows Elisabeth Sparkle, played by Demi. And by the way, guys, she's 61. She looks fantastic for 61. I hope I look that good. I hope I'm that mobile at 61. She's a star, and she's known for her aerobics show in her later years of her career. It's on her 50th birthday that she is fired by her boss, Harvey, who's played by Dennis Quaid. But by the way, again, Dennis Quaid should play way more villains. He is fantastic as a villain. She ends up also in a car crash that day, and through one of the nurses or doctors at the hospital, she learns about the substance, which promises her to transfer her into an enhanced version of herself. When Elisabeth decides to follow through with it, in taking it, she incensed Sue, played by Margaret Qualley, I think it's how you say her last name, a younger, more vibrant version of herself. We're reminded throughout that they are one. They're one person. And one is active, the other one is pretty much in a coma, and they have to switch every 7 days, no exceptions. Once they get into a routine, this is where things kind of go sideways.
Not to forget, you are one. You can't escape from yourself.
I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. I was not going to review this at all. Not even when it hits streaming. I don't do well with body horror. There's certain levels of body horror. It grosses me out. People were telling me, see this on an empty stomach, relating this very much to Cronenberg, which I do see Cronenberg in this. I do also, by the way, I do appreciate The Fly, but something about like pustule horror, I can't do it. But maybe I'm just so desensitized by working in the industry, or maybe what I consider body horror is just on a different level, because this wasn't too bad. It wasn't really bad. Is there some grossness to it? Maybe I could see people being grossed out on certain scenes, but I think it plays very well for the story. Any use of the body horror utilizes very well with the story, and it plays to it. It's not a movie that just does body horror just to go over the top. It really utilizes it as part of the storytelling. Now, men can appreciate this movie, but to me, there's levels about beauty standards and how hard we can be on our appearance that I think it's more directed toward women in this. But again, men can totally appreciate this. Demi Moore's performance too, Oscar worthy. Though they barely get horror movies Oscars, I really think she should get one for this. But to me, also the standout is also Dennis Quaid as Harvey, the creepy Hollywood executive. This is a non-spoiler, but one of the most disgusting scene in this movie is also in the trailer. Plays a little bit in the trailer. Is when he's eating shrimp and crawfish, and I felt like I was going to throw up at that point. That was disgusting, and I think it's just to show how disgusting he is as an individual, a person in this movie. The color palette in this movie is amazing. I'm a sucker for movies that put time into adding this level into its storytelling with the use of color. Utilizing color to convey a feeling or add a type of character is used so well in this movie. I also realize that the more I think about this movie, the higher the rating goes. Like, I left the theater at probably about a 7. While I don't think this is going to be my movie of the year, Strange Darling holds that spot right now. It's definitely a strong second place for me. It's right now I would rate it at 8 out of 10. Highly recommend this as a theater watch. Don't wait to see this on stream. Go see this in the theaters. Support this movie in the theaters. You will be glad you have seen it instead of waiting for it on stream. That being said, that is my non-spoiler review for it. Let's kind of get into spoilers. All right. We're in spoiler territory now. So 3, 2, 1, spoilers. The body horror is fantastic in this movie. You find out if Sue goes even a few hours longer during her time awake instead of just switching on time. It literally sucks the youthfulness out of Elisabeth. It happens the first time. Elisabeth wakes up and her finger looks like it belongs on a corpse or like somebody in their late hundreds. And as someone trained in special effects, I remember one time my teacher told me this. He said, anybody can really do character and horror design. You have a little bit more grace and leeway with that. But to recreate skin, aging skin, changing somebody into someone else, like make something realistic, once you learn how to do that, learn that craft, you're golden, baby. You can pretty much do anything. And to see this being used in this movie, so well done. I really hope this is all practical effects. So well done. I'm amazed. Like, the special effects artists for this should be praised on this. The skin, the aging, the texture, even when we get into the really gory parts of it, so well done. So as Sue continues to use more time, where Elisabeth eventually turns into like this old hunchback woman with like swollen knees and boobs hanging basically down to your knees and stuff like that. It wasn't grotesque. It almost made me feel sorry for Elisabeth. And it reminded me, not always, but it reminded me of the saying, baby boys give a pregnancy glow and baby girls suck the mama's beauty out of them. Because basically in this movie, Elisabeth gives birth to Sue. Her back rips open and Sue pops out. And the effects are great here. But it reminded me of that saying, like, oh, your daughter will always steal your youth or steal your beauty. Now, it is a satire on beauty standards. Women are always pressured to look younger, fertile, vibrant. And I'm not saying men aren't pressured. Men have their own pressure in the world to look muscular and have six packs and all this stuff. But men's internal clock isn't tied to their fertility like women are, where men can have children well into their 70s and 80s. Not saying they should, but they can. Women don't. And there was a comment made by Harvey, Dennis Quaid's character, when he's in the bathroom and you get this really weird close-up of him, which almost was gross in itself, not knowing that Demi Moore's character was using a stall, saying that women's eggs pretty much are gone after 25 or dry up after 25. And you got to remember, Elisabeth just turned 50, So again, tying our fertility to our appearance and beauty standards and age. Now, once Sue continues to steal time and youth from Elisabeth, the effects just keep getting grosser. She basically has to remove a substance out of Elisabeth's spine and take a shot of it every day to stabilize her. Otherwise, she'll literally fall apart. And you see that later on in the third act. She continues to go into the same wound each time, and it gets pussy and infected, and it's gross, but it works. It's so gross. It looks so real. I for a minute, it took me out. I was like, did they actually puncture Demi Moore's back? But it looks so good. Now, the third act is, I know, where it lost some people. And I know there's a thing like, oh, people walked out. And I don't think anybody would walk out on this. Maybe. If you've got a weak stomach. By the way, you can eat before you see this. Don't worry about that. So we fast forward 3 months. Sue has become a successful star. She's getting ready to host the network's New Year's Eve party, which is like a big deal. It'll be on air. And she finds out she runs out of stabilizer. Elizabeth's pretty much dried up. And mind you, Elizabeth's been in this coma for like 3 months, aging really bad. And she calls the folks who create the substance and they tell her, like, well, Elizabeth has to wake up. That's how you're going to like rejuvenate the fluids in her. She does this. And when Elizabeth wakes up, she is like this old hunchback of a woman. And again, great effects in this prosthetic lane. I mean, she's got boobs swinging to her knees. And at this point, Elizabeth finally decides to terminate Sue. Mind you, she's been asked multiple times when she's called to complain, do you want to terminate? And she decides not to. Because there's a contrast of Demi Moore's Elisabeth when she is awake for the 7 days. It's almost like a deep, dark depression. Actually, it is. All she does is eat all day, sits in front of the TV all day, doesn't do anything with herself. She's just waiting for Sue to be able to take over. And then Sue is getting this new aerobic show. She's being told she's loved by everyone. So it's a very interesting contrast on this. But she finally decides to terminate Sue and then chickens out at the last minute. Sue wakes up, ends up killing Elisabeth in this brutal like fight scene. Mind you, old Elisabeth. Oh, one thing I want to point out too. We find out as Sue is basically sucking the life out of Elisabeth, there's no way to reverse it. So each time Elisabeth has given the opportunity to terminate this, she decides not to at her own risk. Now, at this point, Sue decides, she's going to go host the New York party. She doesn't have a stabilizer. She goes there to get her dress on and stuff. And then things start falling off. Teeth start coming up out of her, which is great. And I've been trying to figure out how they did this. And I think what they did was they have like a prosthetic piece in there with the loose teeth as the actresses is pulling the teeth out. It's great. And then her ear falls off. So she ends up going back home and taking the last bit of the activation serum that you're only supposed to use once and that's it. Thinking that, okay, well, if Elisabeth did it, if herself Sue does it, she'll have even a more vibrant version of herself. And instead, obviously, goes haywire and she turns into this kind of like, think Elephant Man meets The Fly, meets like just this morbid creature with Elisabeth's face, by the way, on her back. And she heads to the New York celebration. And one thing was interesting to me. So in the apartment that most of these scenes are taken from, there is a huge picture of Elisabeth, of Demi Moore. And then what Sue does is cuts out the head and glues it to her face. Puts the dress on, and mind you, she's this big hunchback morbid creature, and decides to go to the New York New Year's celebration, where she surprises the audience, calls her a monster, starts freaking out, starts spraying blood on them because people are attacking her. Very Carrie influence, very much Carrie influence. And also, I want to note too, this is a New Year's celebration that will be aired live on TV. That also had a child in the audience, and all of the background dancers, and I don't know what they're called, but they have like the big feathers, are topless. How does that work? I need to understand. That took me out. It's like, a big network, if they're going to go live on TV, they're not going to have topless dancers around. And why would you have a child? I'm just saying, why would you have a child? Okay. Anyway, in the end, she ends up exploding near Elisabeth's Walk of Fame star, which is actually started in the beginning of the movie. You actually get to see it being made, young Elisabeth dancing on it, and then over time you see people wanting to take pictures with it. Then eventually cracks happen. People are like, oh, who's that actress? Oh, some actress from the 70s or whatever. So she ends up exploding, and then the Elisabeth part of this monstrosity of Sue and Elisabeth, basically head like crawls to the star, and then we get a moment where she's just looking up at the sky. She sees a bunch of sparkle fall on her, and she dies. She explodes. She just like melts away, and the next scene we get is just somebody cleaning over the star without a second thought. Like she just is there, and not there anymore, which I think is also a tale of like Hollywood actresses as they're big and upcoming star, and then eventually you're gonna fade away, and there'll just be a puddle that people clean up, I guess. Anyway, so great effects. There's a scene where we get the close up of the teeth, which is my favorite, where she's pulling it out. And even the final monster form, I can't even say this, monster form of Elizabeth Sue looks great. Thank you all for joining me on my review of The Substance. I hope you enjoyed it. Will you be checking it out? Have you checked it out? And let me know in the comments below. And as always, stay spooky, but keep it creepy.